here with Jeffrey Morgan. Where we left off, we were kind of making that transition from the invention to the structuring,
the organizing,
the organization.
Yeah. And in fact, if you can kind of show, if you go down to the corner here, show that Toulmin model thing. Mm-hmm. So this Toulmin model idea was kind of like a unit of organization. This is actually, might even be thinking about as the skeleton of a paragraph. Mm. So usually we've been taught to do this with outlining. Yeah. And I think we ought to try to translate this model into an outline model.
Okay.
So if you just go like right over in the middle here,
okay,
and you sort of say like a Roman numeral 1 or some, the big thing, the thing you always put at the top of the outline, whatever the heck that is. Yeah. That might be our thesis sentence.
So maybe I'll just copy and paste.
Oh, cool. That's pretty cool.
Over here.
Well, that's very cool.
Let's just let's copy and let's just paste that down.
I'll
rewrite the Roman numeral 1.
Okay, cool. Very cool. Page. Yeah, there you go.
Let's say this is our Roman numeral 1.
And now, if you have that sort of A, B, C thing, so the A thing would be our first topic sentence. Now, we agreed that there's going to be an argument. We're going to have one paragraph's going to be about something about the motivation of officials. So why don't you just take that much for the time being?
Okay.
We don't have a claim about it yet. Okay. But we just put that kind of somewhere around A.
So I didn't write a big claim. I didn't say the motivations of are good.
Exactly.
I want to write something about that.
Right. So we have a topic with no claim, but we'll go back and we'll create a sentence that's a claim here in just a second. So we'll put that one there.
Okay.
Then we got one that says state mandates might help a classroom that's really broken.
Might help.
So that would be B. Might help. Yeah, I should have probably made that red thing.
Okay, I'll put both of them here. State mandates.
There you go. Okay.
So I'll copy. And I'll paste that. State mandate. So I'm gonna leave some space because this is gonna be a different.
Yeah, not here. You can put it all together. I'll make you change it later.
Okay, state mandates.
Okay.
And then might help.
Yeah.
Might help a classroom that is really broken.
Right.
So.
And it's interesting to watch. I think our attitude toward that has got increasingly skeptical, but we're putting it there because that's going to be a B. Right. So that'll be like that's a B. And then we have another one, which is state mandates hold back more successfully performing classrooms.
Right. So that's another one. So let me see. Hold back. So it's going to be hard for me to copy and paste properly. Yeah. So I just write that down.
Actually, well, you know what's interesting? And by the way, it isn't really state mandates. It's more like micromanaging. I mean, when we got to that last point, that was your real point. So, okay, micromanaging.
And then
hold back.
So then we also have
micromanaging.
I'll just write micro.
Yeah, cool.
Might hold back.
Yeah, exactly.
Are definitely going to hold back more successful classrooms.
Exactly.
Micromanage.
Okay.
Hold back.
Yep, there you go. And
successful.
We obviously have to do that. And then there's probably one more around, and maybe it's even more than one paragraph, around alternate solutions.
Right.
But let's, for the moment, assume it's just going to be one paragraph.
Okay.
On alternate solutions. So now you see what we did. So what's happened now is now we're getting pretty organized. Mm-hmm. We don't know exactly what's going to go in these buckets, but we've got some buckets, and we may actually change the order of the buckets. But basically, the idea behind this is if we fill the 4 buckets under A, B, C, and D, we will have effectively proven the claim in Roman numeral 1. That these are actually going to be taking that claim and breaking it into parts, and then each part we have to prove. If you go back to our Toulmin model, the way we're going to prove it is we're going to provide evidence for each claim and what logic warrants the belief that evidence should lead a reasonable person to accept that claim.
So the way this is going to really evolve into our essay is that this thesis sentence, I thought it was very interesting when you highlighted the difference between an introduction and a thesis. That a thesis is like, okay, this is the point that I'm going to be doing. Introduction is kind of getting us into the mood, so to speak, of what we're talking about.
And when we have the step after so we said invention, organization. The next one's going to be called drafting. Mm-hmm. When we do drafting, we're going to draft an introductory paragraph, which is going to do exactly what you said. When you draft an introductory paragraph, you know where it ends because it's going to end with a thesis sentence.
Right.
And then you have to think about, well, where do I start to reach out and capture the interest of my audience? And then what's the fewest number of sentences I can write to get from where I think they are to where they would be interested in reading that sentence.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of going to end up in the draft phase, probably being the skeleton of our first paragraph.
That's correct.
And then each of these are going to be our next paragraphs.
That's
for
correct.
it. And,
That's
and
correct.
you could think,
Actually, in the draft, this is the last sentence of our first paragraph. That the number.
yes, because you just kind of say that, like, this is the point.
You lead. This is what, and everything after this sentence is totally in service to that.
Right.
That's what's cool about thesis and topic sentences.
And then for each of these, we're going to just try to think, okay, like what, we're going to make a claim. In this paragraph A, I haven't made a claim yet. The motivations of administrators and officials, I'll make the claim now, are well-intentioned.
Okay, so great. So let's just do that. Are well-intentioned.
Are well-intentioned.
Okay, so that's a claim. So now let's go back over to our Toolman model, and we say, okay, that's a claim. What evidence do you have that they're well-intentioned?
Oh, well, once again, here it's anecdotal. It's my interactions with administrators and officials. They're all good human beings. They all, they're not trying to make other people's life harder. They genuinely are trying to improve outcomes for students. They genuinely care about this as an issue at a state level or a national level.
So let me just push on this just a little bit. How many, you've been doing Khan Academy for how long? Visibly to the world.
Visibly, well, depending on how you want to think about it. I mean, we got our office space about 3 years ago.
Okay. So, and in that time period, how many administrators or officials do you think you've had interactions with?
I probably meet one a week.
Okay, so I'm, maybe as many as 100.
Right.
Okay, so you have an enormous amount of credibility. When you say these people are well-intentioned, you have 100 examples. Now, you're not going to name names.
Right.
But you have 100 examples. So therefore, I think you should put that in your paragraph, because that's what warrants me believing that your evidence validates the claim.
Yeah.
And when a person has special experience of their own, sometimes you just say, you tell an anecdote, as you said. I remember talking to Bill Gates, or I remember talking to so-and-so, and they said such and such. And that's another kind of evidence and another kind of warrant. And maybe it's the fact that it's a famous person, or maybe it's just the fact that it's a really clear example that people go, okay, I'm willing to grant your claim.
Right.
But until you give me something, all you've done is made a claim. You have not proven the claim.
Right. So it could just be my example. It is anecdotal, but it's from a position maybe of some type of authority.
Anecdotes are a legitimate form of evidence, particularly in the humanities. In the hard sciences, anecdotes are probably not a legitimate form of evidence, and you really do have to show data, test data, clinical trial data. If you're a pharma, you can't just say, somebody took my medicine and they got better.
But no, I mean, for a claim like this, the motivations of administrators and officials are well-intentioned. There is no data there. There's no study that says, no, they're not well-intentioned. They're bad people.
Exactly. Exactly. And it may be, to be fair, sometimes you have to say, if the claim is so obvious that people would be willing to grant it without more argument, then just take it as stipulated. That's what lawyers sometimes say. I'll grant that claim as stipulated and move on. But usually when we're in this outline thing, every one of the things at A, B, C, and D should be a claim that has enough controversy in it that you
it's interesting.
That it's interesting.
No, and I agree. This is, on one level, it's kind of obvious. Yeah, these are all human beings, and no one's like Darth Vader here.
Well, let's see if we can make it edgier.
Okay.
So they're well intentioned. So why do we think they're screwing up? Because we kind of implicitly do think they're screwing up.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I say someone is well intentioned, that usually is implying that they're not really.
Sal is a very well-meaning individual.
That's exactly right. Exactly. Okay. That's right.
So what is it that we?
But I think it's not obvious. I think a lot of times it's easy to demonize people that you don't agree with.
Correct.
And when you meet them face to face, you realize that they're good people with good intentions.
So let me try.
They're trying to come from a good place.
So let me try a claim that might be behind the claim we're making here, which is that, because you made it up earlier. If you pull down to your pull the screen down to a point you made up here. You said, whenever these people get worried about the system, their reaction is to place more constraints on it and make it more rigid. And I think that's the idea that says, first of all, wow, I think that's true. And it's a command and control approach to a problem that I think you and I both believe does not lend itself to a command and control approach.
So I would kind of, and I mean, this is the way I'm thinking of the way, and you're right, you said in the last paragraph, this isn't how I would naturally write. So it's a really interesting exercise for me. I wouldn't, like the way, this statement right over here, I would kind of start off with like, look, every administrator, official, governor I've met, extremely well-intentioned, extremely, like all they really care about is improving outcomes for students. They're not trying to make anyone's lives harder. And maybe I'll give some examples of that. But then I would finish that paragraph with, however, whenever the public, be the governor, gets worried about the education, the reaction is to place more constraints on it, make it more rigid.
Now, give some evidence for that.
Well, the evidence is more testing, more dictating of what the I mean, it's almost assumed going into this. I mean, Conti is already describing this.
That's right.
This notion.
And so when you're making an argument, we're close to the end of this video too. When you're making an argument, you have to decide: will people grant me this claim? But if I just say it, like I certainly granted you that claim when you said it. If you didn't have to, one of the things you might do is go get one of these highly structured curricula with highly structured tests that have every lesson plan for every day prescribed for the teacher, and you really literally are supposed to be a robot, and say, okay, this is what we're talking about.
Yeah, that would be powerful for actually, I think, a non-teacher to see how micromanaging some of these curricula are.
Yeah. And when you do that, it is shocking. So if we go back down to the bottom of our thing then, what we've been doing in this exercise, and we've just been playing with this 1A, is we're organizing material by clustering it into these buckets. And the buckets cluster around claims. The key idea that, and as we had to discover our claim, and as you work on these things, you realize, well, that's not exactly the claim I wanted. And so that you keep on doing, and by searching for evidence, that makes you think, well, now, wait a minute, what's the real argument?
Right, the evidence might change your claim because it's evidence for you too.
Exactly. And so this is part of just the work of writing and the organizing of writing.